For decades now, there's been culture wars on smaller scales. Recently, it's been about abortion rights, LGBT education, and even legalising cannabis. But right now, it just feels like something bigger is about to happen. There are so many clashes on so many subjects nowadays. From hippies to punks to classic liberals of the 90s to the rights equality movements of the 2000s, and then, of course, the open border frenzy of this decade. The last 40 years have seen a massive shift in the culture of Western societies, from slightly conservative to a very much more liberal stance. But the last few years, we've started to see there's been a pushback. The working class have started to wake up to the extremist liberals' agenda, and we're finally finding our socially and culturally conservative voices, which are most definitely being heard at the ballot boxes. Even if we're just screeched at in public, you will not deny us our voices being heard. First came a Tory majority in 2015 under Cameron. Then in 2016 there was Brexit, of course. Then Trump over in the US that same year. Then came the Tories' re-election in 2017, despite fixing the leadership contest to give us one of the worst prime ministers that has ever been in the UK. And this year, the Brexit Party, which only formed at the start of the year under Farage, that won the European elections. Most of us have experienced a shouty, screeching Liberal at some point, maybe only online via social media, but I don't know many people that haven't been called a racist, a bigot, a transphobe, a Nazi, or some other insult. They're just completely oblivious or just plain fucking ignorant to the damage that extreme liberalism has caused to the social and moral fabric of our societies. So where did liberalism go wrong exactly? Well, I don't want to speak for everyone, but the political correctness that crept in under Tony fucking Blair was the beginning of the pushback, in my opinion. Although nobody quite knew how far the neoliberals were willing to go, it just sort of snowballed from that period. We went from being a nation genuinely looking at ourselves with some perspective after the Good Friday Agreement had been achieved and wondering what other ways we could improve our own society, to a nation whose government and a large portion of the upper classes opted for stealthy interference in the general public's daily lives, and complete ignorance of the public's opinion while not having to face the consequences of their own policies themselves. Take a look at some of the biggest champions of freedom of movement, which of course include Blair. They either lived in walled-off mansions, gated communities, or middle-class suburbs that are 90% plus white British, because a majority of our recent net migration comes from unskilled economic migrants flooding the country, who can't afford to live where they live. They go to the inner cities, to the forgotten-about industrial towns and villages dotted around the country, looking for affordable housing, well out of sight of the elites making the decisions and the champagne socialists backing them up. It's ended up with unscrupulous landlords cramming as many people into one property as possible to maximise profits. Like this one, where Brent Council raided a council house they suspected of being rented out by its supposed occupant to find 31 migrants living in squalid conditions in the 4-bedroom semi-detached house. Or this one in Newham, where 26 migrants made up of 4 Romanian families lived in a 3-bedroomed house. Also in Newham at this time, Newham Council had to clear out 42 migrants out of sheds in the space of just a few weeks. And do you know what all this cramming of people into houses when there's already a housing shortage leads to? Of course you bloody do, because you're already starting to see it across the country. People are being forced to sleep rough. There are many mitigating factors for this, of course, which do include austerity, as most screeching liberals like to shout from the rooftops. But an endless influx of immigration and a failure by successive governments to build enough housing to cope with that influx are two of the main problems, and both can be fixed fairly simply if any government really wanted to fix it. Stem the flow of unskilled economic migrants and build, build, build. It should be the government doing the building too, not just the private sector. We are in desperate need of affordable housing for young couples to rent quite cheaply so they can pair up, save a deposit for their own house and start a bloody family. So what else has contributed to the pushback? Well, I'd have to guess stupid shit like this was part of it. An event where people screamed at the sky on the 1-year anniversary of Trump's presidency. It's just a perfect example of what everybody says about liberals. This TED Talk trying to normalise paedophilia.
Pedophilia is an unchangeable sexual orientation, just like, for example, heterosexuality.
This 10-year-old child dressed in drag dancing in a gay bar while grown men are throwing dollar bills at him, which most definitely is not amazing, by the way. It's fucking creepy. In what sodding world is that not child abuse? I think one of the latest steps that has pushed a few more people over the edge is this self-ID bollocks. When people like Martina Navratilova and ex-Olympians like Sharon Davis and Paula Radcliffe and Kelly Holmes all come out against something, you know that they went too far. I don't give a toss if a man wants me to call him Susan. We can change our names via deed poll, that's something that's possible. I don't give a shit if a man wants to wear a dress and high heels and women's underwear, that's entirely his prerogative. I don't give a flying fuck whether a man wants to suck dick, take dick, give someone else some dick, or anything in between. It is none of my fucking business. But when it comes to using public toilets, playing in sports, or anything that invades places of sanctuary for women, you're a man, mate. And this is before, well, I'm not even going to talk about it, but this is before I mentioned the pride flag being hijacked for commercial purposes, for fuck's sake. By the end of the 90s, liberalism had pretty much won the culture war. Social conservatism wasn't dead, but it had to take a back seat for a while. Even in conservative parties across the Western world, David Cameron only got the Tories re-elected in this country by modernising and liberalising the party as a whole. He even legalised gay marriage. But then, what it meant to be liberal just got turned upside down and inside out. Liberalism slowly turned into authoritarianism, much like the socialism lot that we see today. That would very quickly turn into communism if they ever actually got into power. Identity politics became a tool to close down free and fair speech and criticism. I mean, for fuck's sake, they even started using a word widely recognised to have been made up for propaganda purposes when they adopted the word Islamophobia. We do not have blasphemy laws in this country. But if you're expecting it to end anytime soon, folks, you're probably in for a rude awakening. But the more we do see liberals push to the insane extremes and screech insults at people who disagree with their points of view, the more people will just roll their eyes and walk away until that movement is just one crazy cat lady shouting at herself in a room. Yep, I'm looking at you, Carol Cadwallader. Don't forget to like and subscribe, folks, it really helps out.